Hi, everybody. We'll get started soon. In the meantime, please enjoy the bird songs. Hi, everyone. We'll get started in a few minutes. We're just going to make sure we leave some time for everybody to log on, but we'll get started soon. Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get started. Ethan, if you don't mind pausing the wonderful music. Sorry, you guys, to pause that for you guys. Those were wood thrush sounds and veery sounds kind of mixed together. And Ethan can talk a little bit more about that later too. But welcome. So we're going to be talking about birdsong today and acoustic methods. But first, I just want to introduce us. So my name is Paige Whittick, and I'm the education coordinator for an organization called the Missouri River Bird Observatory. And you may have heard of us. We're the ones hosting this webinar today. So you probably visited our website. And we work to essentially help Missouri's birds and their habitats and other wildlife. And one way you can think about our work is through these different eggs, we call them. So different things that we would like to hatch. So providing quality habitats, feeding the flock refers to sustainable agriculture, providing bird-friendly communities, so preventing things like window strikes and planting native plants. And then people and nature, so also encouraging people to get outside and really enjoy what's around them. And if you're curious as to the different projects that fall into those different eggs, you can learn more on our website, which is just mrvo.org. And that's a great place to go for a lot of the resources to get started with what we're going to be talking about today too. So with that, birds are awesome. And I'm going to hand it over to Ethan Duke, who is the director and co-founder of Missouri River Bird Observatory. There you go, birds are awesome. So he'll be talking to you about why that is, part of why that is. So go ahead, Ethan, get started.
Thank you very much, Sarah Page. Yes, birds are indeed very awesome. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I started recording birds in Tennessee in 2006. That's my campsite there, and I just hung out all summer basically and worked a field job. And while I was doing that, really got into bird song. I'd sit there and just read about bird song all night, and get up in the morning and go to work and record birds, and really got into it. I also recorded Veery sounds in New York because the sole purpose of my job in 2009. And then since then, I've dabbled around with collecting Missouri bird songs. I set out ARUs and NFCs. ARUs are autonomous recording units that are basically, both of these things are recorders that you just set out there and leave alone. And then later you go and retrieve your recordings and run analyses on them. They can be used not only for birds, but other wildlife as well. The night flight calls were used to try to record birds that are migrating and most birds migrate at night, and they emit these call notes. So yeah, I've been dabbling around with it for quite a while, but just like bird watching, I mean, there's people that have been bird watching as long as I've been doing these recordings, and they're way better bird watchers than I am. And there's people that are way better acoustic, recordists than I am. So don't be intimidated by it. And I just want to let you know there's some experience, and this is what some of the things I've learned, and I hope these things help you. I have a couple poll questions just to make sure that, I mean, I've pretty much tailored this presentation to be good for everybody, those with absolutely no birdsong experience to those that really want to geek out on it. So maybe Paige can throw up a couple poll questions real quick, and then we'll get started into it.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm going to launch the poll now, and just feel free to respond, and then I'll close it after a few seconds, and you'll get to see the results.
How much birdsong experience do you have? I don't know many songs. I know a few bird songs, maybe cardinals and robins and things. I know many bird songs because I'm just totally geeking out into it, and I can't not hear birds every time I step outside.
All right, so here are the results. So it looks like most people know a few songs, 48%, 32 don't know many songs, and 20% are really into bird song.
Good to know, good to know. One more question there, and we'll be good. What would you most like to learn about bird sounds? Maybe you just want to just learn almost as just basic stuff, and you just find it an interesting topic. Maybe you want to focus on bird sounds because you want to be a better birder. Maybe you want to record sounds and post them someplace useful and help and contribute like eBirders do for science. Or maybe you really want to geek out and you want to record and examine sound spectrograms and really, dive into it. There's some people that want to be better birders. Look at that. Most people want to be better birders, but look at, I have my geek squad coming in. Look at, I got 4% there. One person really wants to dive into it there. So now I know. Thank you for your patience on that. And let's begin. My journey into birdsong really, there's a few things that really got me into this contemporary science because technology has evolved so quickly and there's become good literature and good information out there. And I just want to share a few things with you that you might really help you enjoy and become a better birder. First and foremost, I just love Donald Kreutzmann's Singing Life of Birds, the art and science of listening to birdsong. He got a Burroughs Award for it. He's just a consummate professional, that he's an expert in this field, and he wrote it for lay people to really enjoy and understand birds. I'm so geeked out by this book. I actually got the certified geekness. I got the actual signed copy of his book, or he signed the copy that I had. Another good thing is just like a standard field guide for birds, but this one actually is Bird Songs by Nathan Pipolo, and it is excellent. And we'll be referring to some of the terminology that he uses to help you describe and figure out what birds these are. And then as you dive in a little bit deeper, you might get into Tom Stephenson's and Scott Weddle's book, The Warbler Guide. And it's comprehensive. It covers birds' plumages and everything about all of our wonderful warblers out there, but they really get into sound really, really well. And that is too. So I use some of their terminology as well. And another thing is the apps that are out there now, and I particularly like this one. I like Song Sleuth, and it's an app that you can pull up on your phone, and you can actually record and look at your own sound spectrograms, and it'll record it in waveform, which is something you want to do. You don't want a compressed MP3 file, and it might be useful. I'll just give you a little screenshot view so you can sort of see what it looks like. Here I'm recording. All of a sudden I hear this bird. You can see its sound. You press stop, you can adjust it maybe, and then run the ID on it, and it'll tell you what possibly birds it is. And this one looks like American robin. So there's those nice little tools out there for that 1% out there that's really geeking out and wants to record birds and look at sound spectrograms. You might want to get a parabolic reflector and a solid state recorder, just like people use at sporting events. You might want to look at desktop software. I use primarily Raven Pro. It's expensive unless you're an institution, but they have Raven Lite as well, which is free. And there's other programs out there too. At the end of this, I provide a comprehensive list of these resources, and they're also on our website where the recordings of this webinar will be posted. So there's the resources. One last one I want to really show you, though, is Zeno Canto. It's this great collection of websites sharing bird songs from around the world. And I post to this. A couple other people in Missouri post to this. It's a really neat resource. It's the most comprehensive bird song lists in the world. You can pretty much find any bird song anywhere in the world on this. You can search by species or map or whatnot. But Zeb will have a little announcement later about Missouri birdsong specific. But I see him smiling there. Then let's dive in. Here's your bird. You want to be able to identify a bird. And most people that bird watch learn these basic things right from the beginning. And they're not really intimidated by them because things make sense. You have ear patches, crowns, bill, throat. I mean, we know where these things are at. Once in a while, they have some really weird names for like a superciliary stripe or something like that. But really, this helps. And people aren't too intimidated by it because it makes sense. But what happens when you don't see that bird and you don't have a clear view? What if you just have this? You can't describe an eye stripe, an eye line, a throat. How would you describe that? A lot of people, everybody on this webinar would probably describe that in some different way unless they're a real bird nerd. And that's just human nature. It would really help if we could actually see that sound. And so we're going to have to talk about what those sounds look like and then form a common lexicon so that we can really describe them well. So that's what that sound looks like. And I bet by the end of this webinar, you'll be able to describe what that is. Now, this is a bird I recorded down in Rolla. By the way, every single recording on here is a recording that I made. So I didn't poach anybody else's recordings, and I didn't liberate any from Zeno Canto. The basics of sound spectrograms. So these things, when we're looking at a sound, this is what it is. This is a graph, basically. On the y-axis there, we have pitch or frequency, how high or how low it is. And those are in kilohertz, there's cycles. We don't want to get too far into that. There's time. So that's 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And then there's also how loud they are. So you can have many different colors. You could have just a black and white spectrogram, but the brighter or the more emphasized those particular squiggles are, those lines are, the louder it is. So this is a two-dimensional view. You can look at decibel levels and other graph forms, but for this particular purpose, we're just going to look at the sound spectrograms. You can also look at them three-dimensionally. Imagine the brightest parts of that sound are actually coming right out towards you. It's pretty amazing how birds can control those so well. And it becomes pretty important diagnostic when you get really, really into it. Look at that. That's an American Robin song. Roger Tory Peterson called that caroling. We'll get into a couple more sounds here, but it's important to understand the sound patterns and terms. And these are the ones that Nathan Piplo, these are the ones that he really uses to help as a key in his book, the Field Guide to Birds of Eastern North America. Now, that includes Missouri. So for you, most of you Missouri folks, it's just an excellent guidebook. But the main 5 basic pitch patterns, you know, ones that don't change, that are monotone, those that rise up, and it goes Z, those that come down, those that have an overslur, and those that have an underslur. Now that's about as complicated as pitch patterns ever get. But if you know those and you know how to listen for those and describe those, it's going to help you in the long run. Here's another thing you need to ask yourself. If you hear a bird sing, are those notes slow enough to count, or are those notes too fast to count? Because this can help you put them in 4 basic categories. So notes that are they're slow enough to count, and they have unique notes, those are phrases. Those that repeat are a series. Now, notes that are too fast to count, and there's a bunch of birds that do that, they call those warbles. Now, if they're too fast to count and they're not unique, then it's a trill. Warbles and trills, phrases and series. So again, these resources will all be available. This particular image behind there, that graph of 4 things, that is available at earbirding.com, at Nathan Peoples' blog. It's really nice. He has an interactive section that refers to his book. 7 basic tone qualities. This is about as complicated as we're going to get right here. But it's going to really help you be able to describe and understand sounds. Now, I'm providing examples here of recordings from Missouri birds. So here's a good example of a nice whistle. Those are pretty much straight lines right across there. And some of you may know what that bird is. That's our chickadee. That's our chickadee song. Then we got very low frequency booming. You might not even hear those if you have trouble with your low frequency. You notice this scale is down to 2 kilohertz. Most of the time they go up to 10, which is the limits to human hearing pretty much. But that's a greater prairie chicken. That was a recording from that autonomous recording unit I threw out at Taborville Prairie in Missouri. Okay, now ticking. Now ticking, these straight little, you know, this isn't a true sonogram line here, but they pretty much do that. And ticking can be done in succession, like that series, or like a trill almost, but usually in a series. And if they're just straight up and down like that, they're non-musical and they're really boring. And if they sort of tilt and swoop in any little way, then they're a little bit more musical. But here's one from Missouri. Our wetland technician recorded this just this last month down in the Boot Heel before we got driven home from extensive field surveys. And some of the bird nerds might know that one. Great wetland bird, the king rail. Burry and buzzy sounds. Okay, these tone qualities are really pretty prevalent in the bird world. And I've got 2 examples. One is burry. This one I recorded actually this morning, is a summer tanager. This one is a 2nd-year male. You know, he looks tie-dyed. He's red and yellow. This is pretty common Missouri bird to come through. So here's burry. You heard that? Burp, burp. Just a little burry, like a little raspy, almost like he has a little bit of a sore throat. And then there's buzzy. Now this song is going to be the song of a white-crowned sparrow, but the end of it is really buzzy. So you hear pure notes and you hear the buzz at the end. Isn't that neat little buzz? What a nice sound. So those long whistles are typically more pleasing to the human ear than the buzzes, but the buzzes are very distinctive, so they're good. They're a good descriptor. Then there's noisy sounds, and these ones are almost like staticky. They don't even sound like a natural thing at all sometimes. So this one's kind of weird. I recorded this one in Ecuador. It's a yellow-rumped cacique. Play it again one more time, just because you want to hear how weird it is. That's weird. It sounds almost like electric. I think great-tailed grackles will do that kind of thing as well. Then there's nasal, and of all these songs, all these different tone qualities, there's a lot of subtle variations within them. But here's a nasal sound. This one's called a whine, and this is from one of my favorite birds here, a very common Missouri bird. It's called the blue-grayed gnatcatcher. So here's the blue-grayed gnatcatcher's whine. Nice little, that's pretty nasal. It sounds like he's got a stuffed nose. Then we have the polyphonic. That's the last one of these tone qualities. And polyphonic is something it creates almost like this ethereal sound, like in the very beginning of this presentation, while some of you are waiting, you could hear wood thrushes and veeries. They have that ethereal quality. There's other birds that do that too. And it's amazing. You can see in this line of this fake spectrogram here, there's lines going every which way. Now this bird Paige is going to chastise me because I didn't explain this well in the beginning, but the thing that makes us different than birds in our way we make sounds is birds have a syrinx, where we have a larynx, which is a singular organ where birds can control a couple different sounds at one time with their complex syrinx. And so on the left syrinx, they may be doing this. And on the right syrinx, they may be doing this. Or they may be doing both simultaneously. But as you can see, the fundamental harmonic, the lowest frequency, when a bird makes a sound, This is the first one. And look how it replicates itself up all the way. And this one's a copy of this one, which is a copy of this one, which is a copy of that one. And sometimes they just throw them together and they're not even complete copies of each other. And you can't hear this like many bird songs unless you slow it down. So this is a bird I recorded this morning. Okay, this bird actually woke me up at 3:30 in the morning. And by just before first light, I just got out of bed and I said, I'm going to go record that bird because he's not usually singing by the house and we don't usually hear him here. So I'm going to go down there. And so I went down and recorded him. This is one of his calls that he does this with. It's a yellow-breasted chat. Wasn't that exciting? Actually, this is what it looks like. You can see this is that recording from this morning. Here's his fundamental harmonics right here. And he replicates that all the way up through. This is supposed to be in nature the loudest part, this lowest part, but he actually knows how to dampen that down somehow. And he decided, I want this frequency band to be the highest. And so that's it right there. And I'm going to slow it down. And this way you can hear all those sounds that's so fast we can't quite hear. Isn't that weird? It's almost like a whale sound. So I'm going to go over a couple more key, simple elements in terminology. These ones are into that warbler guide. So these are just another way of describing them. Sometimes people call these things notes. Sometimes they call the whole chunk of sounds a syllable, you know, or they call them strophes. Back in the day, you used to use strophe a lot. Europeans like to call these things strophes. But I always want to use these because these are a good way to go. This is that recording that I had earlier from a pine warbler. And I'm going to play this after we see what it's made up of. Elements. See these elements here? Each one of these, look at it, it's basically the same thing over and over and over again. But you can tell this is 29.5 seconds into the recording, and then this is 30 seconds. So he's going about a second or so there, but it's a lot within that second. You know, that's a lot if we wanted to try to count it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you didn't see it, could you count it? Can you count them? I see Paige over there. She's trying to count. We can't count it. It's too fast, and they're all the same. Oh, I wish I had a poll question up there because I could throw that up there. And what do you think that would be? Would that be a trill or a series? Everybody hear that? That was a slow speed on that one. Another, there's three of these key terms I want to share with you. Another one would be phrases. So we saw each one of these things would be an element in here. This is a different bird. This is another recording from Missouri of a northern parula. But you can see he's got a lot of these same little elements in there, but then he changes it up at the end. So we could consider that a phrase. When we consider that a phrase, if there's a big gap in it, would be even better example. But the American Robin earlier was a good example of different phrases. You can hear the difference there. Here's a better example of breaking up a sound. And this is just the last one I'm going to share with you. And this is called Sections. And this is a Strulian recording I made in 2006. And typically their songs aren't that close together. I just edited this so I could share for this example here and put them together and show that the sections, you have the first section here. There's obviously a difference between that group of shapes, the next group of shapes, and the third section, this other group of shapes. If you're really geeking out on bird songs and you knew cerulean sound spectrograms, that one on the right has that double third section. It's still a section on its own. This one's really unique. I probably heard two of these, spending three breeding seasons with ceruleans. But so you can hear all those sections. I hope that makes sense to people. The Warbler guide, I'd really recommend it. You can also find it on the web, and you can see their descriptions once you dive into it. Also, if you get really, really into bird ID and you want to be a really great birder, you get into the calls, the little ticks, the little alarms, the little flight calls, and you'll know the difference between a flight call and a regular call. And they're just very short sections, less than a tenth of a second often. I want to give a few recording tips out there, or better yet, maybe a few listening tips. It can be like, some of my ornithological heroes here, like Ted Parker there. Bird like you're hunting, you don't want to move right at your quarry. You want to sort of sneak off to the side a little bit. You don't want to disturb them. You want to capture their natural sounds, and you don't want to, give yourself away too much. Wear subtle colors, camouflage. Do what you can do to not seem too obvious. Bring binoculars with you, but don't overuse them. Don't create too much movement, but bring those binoculars with you so you can really get good eyes on those birds. And be opportunistic and patient. It's a balance out there. Sometimes you're just not going to be able to get that bird. You're going to dip on it, but you can still take advantage of whatever you're there for. That's basically everyday birding. And then also with recording, it's really important to record your state, your location, your date and time, and your name maybe. Because these recordings can go and be housed in libraries and saved forever, and researchers can go back and call upon them, and they may not have all that information, but if it's embedded within the recording, they can have it, and they can put better context to that particular study. So here's the resources I referred to. The mobile app, the Warbler guide, that's out there as a book form as well. The desktop software. There's also Audacity, which I haven't used much, but it's free. You can look at sound spectrograms. More stuff on the web. Remember, these are on our website as well. Donald Kruzma's book, but he's got several others on birdsong that are really excellent. The Warbler ID guide that we mentioned, and then the ear birding blog. That's Nathan Pipolo's book. He can be found there. He's got the Western version and the Eastern version of that Peterson guide. So with that, I'll wrap it up, and we'll get to some questions. And also, Zeb may have something he would like to share with us. So think of your questions, pop them up in the Q&A, and I'm going to hand this thing over to Zeb.
All right. Thanks, Ethan. That was a wonderful presentation that hits on all of the bases that you need when you're talking about bird songs and how to record birds. So while you guys are thinking of questions, I'm going to drop an announcement that we have been working on another website with the Missouri Bird Observatory, and it's going to focus specifically on bird sounds. Now, it's called Missouri Bird Song, but it's going to be songs and calls. And what I'm going to do right now is share my screen so we can go through a quick tutorial of what it looks like. So this is the homepage of Missouri Bird Song, which is a new resource for Missouri birders. So what we hope to have on here is groups of bird recordings by species, and then we'll have the species grouped into different groups. And right now we have two categories of backyard birds and grassland birds. We will be updating those as we keep going. Again, this is really new, so we're trying to get everything just off the ground right now. So we're going to have recordings, and then we're going to have a discussion page, and then how to submit recordings, and then more information that you can look up when you're trying to learn about bird songs or how to go about doing that. So what I'll have here on the bottom of our page is actually a blog post that basically is going to introduce everything I've just said right now, talking about what the goals of this website are, and then what we hope you can accomplish, and what you would like people to have the opportunity to discuss in our forum. And then Ethan highlighted a lot of resources and how to start bird recording. So I also put a post about the very basics of bird recording. And what else we will have on here is, of course, bird recording. So that's the best way to do it. These are going to be specific to Missouri, with the caveat that there are some surrounding state ones. So like just over in Kansas or North Iowa and Illinois, we've got a couple very borderline recordings that are not technically in Missouri, but they're close enough that we're going to count them. And what will happen is you can search for a bird in the keyword area here. And if you pull up, let's pull up that pine warbler that Ethan was talking about. So if I use pine warbler should come up. Yes, and so you'll see that all of our pages are actually sorted by 4-letter code, but if you type in the name of a bird by its common name, actually, or its scientific name, it should come up. So we can look at that page. This one's still new and under development, but we should have that recording popping up. And it'll be important to note that all of our recordings are embedded from Xenocanto. So we're going to take the Xenocanto recordings that are in Missouri and then put them on our website, so it's easier to access. Xenocanto is a great resource, perfect, wonderful resource. And they want to promote their website, so they encourage being able to look at their recordings in other places. So this is our way of making it a little easier for people in Missouri, because it's actually challenging on Xenocanto to try and bird by a specific area. They've got like North America, and then you can try and zoom in on a map, but this will be just bird recordings in Missouri. So the other thing I want to go through is start with one of our recording collections. So we've got birds you can search by, or you can look, if you want to look at just, I want to practice learning the birds in a certain group. So I'm going to click on grassland birds, and we've got this list of wonderful grassland birds. These are actually our target species from our grassland bird surveys. And so they're grassland obligate birds, and then they have specific sounds. I'm going to go look at greater prairie chicken first. And so you'll see, just like when you search for a bird in the search menu, it'll show the page is its 4-letter code, but it has their name, their scientific name, and then any recordings. This is, again, that recording Ethan had. And you'll see that Xenocanto embeds, it shows the spectrogram as well. It's not in the bright, fancy colors that Ethan's software uses, but you can see, again, it's a really low call, so it's really low in the spectrogram here. We'll have the prairie chicken booming. I'm not going to try and play it because I don't know if my audio works super well. But typically, we're going to try and have a picture of the web page of the bird, and then any songs or calls. Now, some birds don't sing, so they have calls, and you'll see more of those, and then you might not see a recording. And some birds will have calls but don't sing, so you have kind of a little bit of both. And some birds do both, but we don't have recordings of both. So this is going to be our ask for you guys. We would like, if you are interested in making your own recordings, if you would upload your own songs, this actually should take you, this upload your own here will take you to Xenocanto if it loads. And it shows you how to upload. So you have to log in, and then there's an upload sounds page here. I'm not going to go into details on that now. I'm going to go back to our website, hopefully. So yeah, so that's the basics of Missouri Birdsong as far as the repository of bird songs. Now, the other resource that we think is going to be really helpful on here is our discussion forum. So currently it's set up that there's going to be 4 forums actually. We're going to have the main forum, which is for general topics, and then recording submission thread. This one's going to be really important for us as the owners of the website, where if you upload a recording to Xenocanto, if you comment on this thread, we'll see that you uploaded it and we can put it on the website. And then the ones that we think are going to be the most helpful for people that are browsing our website and have questions, we have an identification questions forum, which will be for like, I heard this bird, it sounds like this. Anybody have any ideas? Or if you have a mystery recording, you can try and drop it there too. Actually, I'm not sure if that functionality is involved. I will have to get back to you, but we can discuss that in the forum. That'll be for identification questions. And then lastly, recording technology. So this is like, what kind of software do you use? Where do I find the links for some of the things that Ethan recommended or stuff like that? Or like, what's the best phone app to use for recording or looking up recordings? That's the sort of stuff we hope to have on here. And you should be able to sign up you'll be able to create an account on this page and then join our forum. I think that's all I have. Actually, there's two more things I have. I did want to show, because Ethan mentioned it, that the other tool, he uses Raven. I typically use Audacity. Is this showing up? Can I get a thumbs up if you see Audacity here? Perfect. Okay. So Audacity also is another one. This is the free open source one. This is what I use to trim and pick out my recordings. Right here, I believe I've got a Northern Flicker call. There's a bunch of other calls in this recording. It was just off my front porch earlier today. There's a couple different settings on here too, but Spectrogram is the one that Ethan was talking about. It really shows the bird calls really well. So if you go down to there, you'll see your recordings here. And then you can process and edit and export. I'm not going to get into that too much today. I don't want to overwhelm you guys too much, but I did want to show that this one is a really good tool as well. And then last thing I have while we're waiting on questions and hoping to hear from you guys is we have more webinars coming up. So our next couple webinars are going to be, we've got the rest of this series coming up. That's the note page. I'll just leave it like this. So we've got the rest of our series is 7 Simple Steps is coming up. And then Birds of Prey is on June 2nd. And that one we're actually going to have guest presenters from Missouri Raptor Rehab. That's the group, right? Yeah, seeing heads nod. So yes, so Birds of Prey, we will have actual live raptors on our webinar with Raptor Rehab, and then we're going to announce 2 more webinars featuring the lowly sparrow, kind of all you can think about when talking about sparrows, a couple of the different sparrow species. And then a new idea for us is going to be on June 16th. We're going to talk about the movie The Story of Plastic. So it's going to be a panel discussion based webinar sort of thing. So with that, I think I'll leave the screen up for a couple more minutes so you can take a look at this and then look at our website, and we will wait for some questions. I think we've got some questions coming in, so if Paige and Ethan want to jump in, we can start answering some questions.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to say first, great job, guys. And I'm sure I hope all the attendees are like me and are just like, oh my gosh, there's so many great resources out there for me to get started with birdsong, because there is. So I hope at the very least you got some information about where to go from here. But yeah, we have some great questions. And so I'll read them, and then Ethan or Zed can answer them. So the first one we got is a great question. So it says, is there a Peterson's guide for Western bird sounds? I live in Arizona.
Yep.
Awesome. I believe
So,
the answer is yes.
so here's the Eastern one right here. And then I'm just going to share my screen real quick to share where you can find that. Here's that ebirding.com, and you can see the Peterson Field Guide to Bird Sounds. There's a link right there at the very top, as well as how to visualize bird sounds. And then you go right here, and there's the Western version, and there's the Eastern version right there. So, yep.
Awesome. Also, I mean, and that's good to know, even if you live somewhere in the Eastern states, if you're visiting the West, that could be a helpful guide for you to peruse. All right, next question. And this, Ethan is definitely going to have to answer, because I do not know the answer to this question. So it just says, I just started working with Raven Pro, struggling with saving and such. I'm new. I have been working in grayscale. Do you find other colors more useful?
Okay, yeah, it's just a little bit of a learning curve, and then you get into it. I like colors because they're less boring, and somehow they seem more expressive, and you have like more of a visual of the gradation of amplitude. So I dig them. There's a couple other settings. There's a lot of neat tricks and things out there. If you run into any problems, just shoot me an email, Katie. I'll be happy to help you out.
All right, awesome. So we have a question. So what about mnemonic species?
Mnemonics. Oh yeah, I didn't really cover that. It's sort of like mnemonics can work really well. Like you know, people say Eastern Towhee says drink your tea. Those things, they do vary across range. And I really wanted to focus in on for this talk, having a shared lexicon on these bird songs. But there's a whole section in Nathan Peplo's book actually about, how they sound. And he associates them with vowel sounds and consonant sounds. But once you get into that discussion, there's a lot of fierce debate about how consonants actually sound to people. So they do work. There are ways they can be helpful, but I would recommend trying to find the real description of these sounds to help communicate with people and to learn.
Yeah, a lot of field guides will have the mnemonic, and then they'll also have some of the other terminology, like it's a buzzy sounding one, or it's some of the other terms that Ethan introduced tonight. They'll put both of them side by side.
Most field guides for most species aren't the same either. So
that's
a thing.
Excellent. So have you or any researchers explored variation in song frequencies among conspecific individuals? And if there are examples of mate selection based on minute frequency differences?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's totally a thing. And we could really use Missouri recordings to figure out answer those questions for our Missouri birds. So oftentimes there's so many fine details in these things that we can't hear with our ears because they happen way too quickly, but we know darn sure that those birds do it. And mostly it's the male singing, and he's doing what they call vocal gymnastics, trying to perform to impress those females. Whether it's his frequency modulation, being able to go from a low frequency to a high frequency really fast, being able to change his song up. There's all sorts of different measures, and it takes observation, it takes recording, and it takes ability to look at these sound spectrograms and sort of quantify and figure out what they're doing. Don Kreutzmann's book gives an excellent example of that, several examples of that. And how birds do that and all these different strategies happen depend on their evolutionary history. And this is a fascinating thing. And when I first got into birdsong and started contacting Don Kreutzmann, he just said, "Welcome to the black hole." And that's one of the elements of the black hole. So that's a great line of thought to pursue. I'd encourage it. And I hope I answered your question.
I think so. I mean, if not, feel free to just stick more questions in there. And I guess just to make sure we cover it, if you have a question, and don't be shy, there's that Q&A button if you move your mouse or tap your screen, and you can just put it right in there, and that's what we're looking at when we're answering these questions. Katie has another question. So I'm aiming to record female song and have been questioned. What if their song is in a frequency out of our hearing capacity? Is there any way to address this? Is it likely that a recorder would pick this up and Raven Pro would be able to display it?
Yep, absolutely. Our hearing, like I said, goes up to about 10 kilohertz. Birds will go up some of those high pitched sounds. You ever hear the titmice when they're freaking out? They're way up there. You get much higher than that in frequency. You get almost into the realm of bats. We certainly can't really hear bats very well, can we? So, but you can see sound spectrograms if you have the right microphones to get to those particular higher frequency bats.
They also have.
Yeah, yes, you can. So female song is something that's been pretty well documented. They've documented female cerulean warbler singing, and everybody is pretty familiar with the northern cardinal females that sing as well. Not only will looking at these sound spectrograms and recording, if they're singing, you'll see it in there if you're pointing your microphone at them. But also, there's a lot of little sub songs, juvenile birds practicing songs, and then there's also these little encounters that they do. So say thrushes and veeries and wood thrushes, they actually have these little whisper songs that are almost imperceptible, but they just bang out on a sound spectrogram, and they're very complex and they're fascinating to look at. So yeah, if it's a sound, those vibrations are going through the air, and a good microphone is going to pick those up better than your ears, and you'll be able to see them on a sound spectrogram.
I wanted to chime in on this one too, because I think everything Ethan said is great, and it sparked one of the things I was thinking of with this. I guess it depends if you think the female songs would be higher or lower than the typical the human ear. There's a certain range that microphones will pick up, but if you think it's something that might be higher pitched, like Ethan was talking about with the bats, it might be good to look at like a bat forum or something, because I know I worked with bat researchers for a little bit, and they had a monitor. I don't remember what it was. I wish I was a little bit more helpful, but they had a monitor where it would bring things down to our hearing level, so you could hear the bats, so you could hear their feeding calls and everything while they were trying to capture them. And then I would think the first thing I think when I'm thinking subsonic or below our hearing range would be whale calls, where they have to alter those frequencies so we can do some sort of analysis of them. But yeah, so a microphone should be able to pick them up, and then there are ways you might be able to hear them, and there might be other tips and advice in other spectrums.
Good points. Forgot about that low frequency thing too. Like those prairie chickens, sometimes people can't even hear them. You know, they're so low, under 200, hertz or whatever they are. And there's always a lot of weird ambient noise down in those frequencies with anthropomorphic sounds anyways. But yeah, there's a range that we can't always hear in, but the microphones will get it.
And I'm sure with the prairie chickens too, there's some aspect of their drumming that's super low, but also is a frequency thing that does affect mate choice.
One of my favorite aspects of those prairie chicken recordings is listening to their feet, like a little drumming of their feet stamping. It's pretty neat.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So scientists will find a way is essentially what you're saying. So, okay, I think this is a great question because it kind of plays into like possible future webinars that we were thinking about doing. So it says, I have watched Raven Pro tutorials, therefore have a very basic knowledge. While I'm trying to gain more extensive knowledge, any tips or resources that may help this person?
The Raven Pro user manual is incredible. There's a couple videos out there, but not many. And they actually have a sound recordist workshop at Cornell that's always been a tough time of year. It's always during field season. It's a little pricey, but maybe with the current situation, they may actually do a virtual thing. I think that'd be really cool. So I went in and signed up just for announcements, just in case they want to do something virtual like that. There's other great labs out there. There's the Bohr lab in Ohio. I don't know if they're still doing stuff. There's other labs that are doing acoustic studies, and not always necessarily in wildlife ecology, but like there's a guy in Tennessee in the psychology department that studies chickadees and titmice and nuthatches and whatnot. So if you just get Googling around and looking for acoustic stuff, you'll find a lot of other resources, or just shoot me an email if you're stuck on something you really want to know in particular. I can help you out.
Cool. And we'll put that email, or Ethan, if you want to write your own email in the chat box or something. But it's also on the website. If you go mrbo.org and you go contact Ethan's email, it's ethanduke@mrbo.org. So it's pretty straightforward as far as emails go. And yeah, so one thing we were thinking of passively doing is like a tutorial type webinar of these different like resources that you can use to explore birdsong if we had enough interest in it. So we'll kind of look into that and explore that possibility too, or some sort of workshop, because I think that would be really cool. I would love to learn. I know nothing. I'm at the very beginning.
We could do that, or we could do birding by ear. And maybe, we're doing the lowly sparrow in a future webinar. What if we did this like sparrow songs or warbler songs, or something that you're having a difficult time IDing out there in the field, and it drives you up the wall because there's always that guy like Paul McKenzie or somebody that's like, hey, that's a blackpoll warbler. And you're like, how did you know that? So you might want to, pick out a particular niche or something. Just shoot us an email, give us some feedback, and we'll be happy to accommodate you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great point. So Edge would love for us to address some discussion of bird sounds by body parts. So for example, like the grouse, the prairie chickens, the timber doodles, and different birds that can make sounds essentially with their feathers because of the way their feathers are structured. I think this is one of the cool things. I have an example from South America that I love, but we should probably talk about Missouri too. But Cornell Lab has like on there, I think it's on All About Birds or Bird Academy or
Mannequins.
something, about they have a video series about the club winged manakin. And essentially this bird like bangs its wings above its back and it makes this like trill sound, and it's like, and the like science behind how they figured out how this bird was able to make that sound is just really cool. And this video series that I'm thinking of like walks you through it. It might have been posted on our Facebook page at some point, but maybe I'll find it and put it in the chat box. But if you guys want to talk more about that.
Yeah, pretty much every guide out here will have a description of all these non-vocal sounds that birds make. And that is absolutely fascinating. Or how they make them, they're not using a syrinx, you know, but yeah. Or there are other mechanical ways of producing sound through their, you know, like the greater prairie chicken or the American bitter, and they inflate these air sacs to get all pumped up, and that's how they produce these big low frequency, long distance sounds. Yeah, that would be a great topic to get into more. You know, hummingbirds, they rattle their wings pretty well.
I was going to say,
shuttling
another
back
Missouri example of wing rattling is the nighthawks, but they don't really do it here. I guess that's over in Kansas, right? Where we've got
I hear
nighthawk.
they do it here. They do it here. Yep. We just had a good flight of them come over the other night, and I didn't hear them booming, but they do. I've heard them in El Dorado Springs booming and elsewhere when they dive down. And if you have a tough time with low frequency, you might not be able to hear them well. But if you record them, you can always amplify it.
I'm going to ask Ethan this question too, because it is related to this. With the doves, they say that like that flight call, is that actually their wings, or is that them vocalizing when they take off? You hear that really high pitch pew, 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 as they fly away.
Not 100%, Zeb. I think it's their wings. I think it's
okay, because I saw that and it sounds so much like a vocalization. That's why I had to ask, because I've heard the same thing. I was like, it sounds like a vocalization.
When you brought up that low frequency stuff earlier, I just immediately thought of mourning doves, because oftentimes you can't even hear that first part of their sound. But if you look at a sound spectrogram, you know, it's buried down at the very bottom of the graph. And then you say, oh, what is that little thing down there? Yeah.
Awesome. So I put that resource that I'm talking about, the like video series, in the chat box. But yeah,
cool.
Good job addressing more relevant species. So we have another question. So in non-quarantine times, do you ever do bird sound identification walks that are available to the public? The answer is yes. That's like, I would say one of the most like frequent program we do is like bird walks, and when you're with a large group of people, like a lot of those bird walks are, it's a lot easier to hear the birds than to see them, because the birds will call from really far away, but they may not necessarily like be there for us to see in our binoculars. So when non-quarantine times hopefully end soon, we will start scheduling more things, and we'll have those events on our Facebook page and website when we have
depending on your region too. If you're not right in our backyard and you don't have a chance to go birding in the awesome Arrow Rock like we get to do, you might want to look into the resources in your part of the state. And I'd highly recommend the Missouri Birding Society, formerly Audubon Society, Missouri. They've got field trips, and people are always doing stuff, and you can always join on with some really great birders there. And also there's the National Audubon Society chapters that are throughout Missouri. Find a local chapter that's doing something. I know around here, Columbia is always doing good stuff. And the Kansas City chapter, they're always having good bird walks and things. And St. Louis is always really active. Springfield's really active. So tune into those groups, support those groups, and have fun if you're not around us. Yeah. Or even if you are around us, you might like them better. I don't know.
We've also been known to join in on a bio blitz at certain locations and do remote bird sound walks too, or at least all bird ID. And I typically ID things by sound, so I generally try and chime in about sound when I'm leading a bird walk. So.
Yeah, bio blitzes at I know the University of Central Missouri does one, but the Prairie Foundation bio blitzes are always a blast. Yeah, Missouri Prairie Foundation.
Yes, but I do like the idea too of doing one like specifically for bird sounds,
Yeah.
because we do tend to focus on seeing them and not always the sounds that we're hearing, but to be specific about that would be a really good idea, I think. And probably a great way to advertise it, because a lot of people are trying to get good at that.
Yeah, people are go out there and they get so serious about birding, they'll have a big year and try to get as many bird species and break the record for the year kind of thing. I think we should have the big ear and see how many birds we can record in a year.
That'd be good.
Nice. So we've got a few more questions. We've got about a minute or so left, but I think this is a good one. So are we only discussing songs and not calls? Somewhere I heard that there were different calls that chickadees or titmice, depending on whether a ground-based threat, cat versus an air-based threat, raptor. So yeah, like different calls that they do based on the high level of threat. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Yeah.
I think you've talked about this before.
Yeah, it's really scary when you get into trying to determine what the function of bird songs are or bird sounds are, because you have to ask them and they don't always tell you, you know. But birds usually sing to attract mates and things, and they typically, people call something that's more of it's an alarm thing or a contact thing. It's not as elaborate as their songs typically, but there's a lot of plasticity to that. So we try to avoid, you know, really classifying them out there as those types of things, but they all have specific functions regardless of whether or not we figured them out or not, you know, even if it's just doing it for fun.
Yeah, that their chickadee call is one of my favorite fun facts about
EDD.
So chickadee.
What else?
So the next one, I posted in the chat a link that's related to asking about how to ID common backyard bird songs. I will direct you to our website that has a list of some of the common backyard birds around here, and most of them have some sort of call or song recording within the state. Otherwise, again, Xenocanto or All About Birds, they'll have some information about their songs, or any field guide too will help with that. But I think backyard birds are a really good starting point too, because oftentimes you can see the bird that's making the noise, and then you can look in the field guide and see how they're defining it and kind of match up these terms that Ethan was talking about to how they describe that song or call that you're hearing.
Backyard birds are just habitat generalists, so they're more common too. You know, that's why we call, you know, not everybody's backyard is the same.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I think that's great. So I think as far as like starting your bird song ID, I think starting with the most common ones, which are typically going to be, at least the most common ones for you will be the ones in your backyard. And like the way, once you get used to like, it's like your ears learn to hear the bird songs in a way that you can identify them. And so like the more used to it you get and the practice you get, like what helps me is I can finally go out and being like, okay, like try to ignore all the songs you're hearing that you already know, because my ears tend to just like attune to the ones I know, and then I miss, someone will be with me and they're like, did you hear that bird? I'm like, no, because that cardinal was so loud. But you know, as you get used to it, you just learn more and more. And it's definitely like, you know, just, you know, be patient with it. I think I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed, and maybe all of you are not feeling that way, but I hope you're excited about learning it because it's really cool. So we should be wrapping up here, but we've got some great questions. Just one more, I think, that I like addressing. So IDing woodpeckers by their pecking rhythm.
Yeah.
I can't do it, but I really want to, because, I believe it's possible. I think like maybe not like between all species, but I think you can get a pretty good idea based on the species. Yeah, so Ethan shows it in that book there. I think it's pretty hard to do, but I think it's definitely possible, and I think it'd be really cool if you could.
Well, you can think of, we've got seven species of woodpeckers in Missouri, at least. And a few of them that can be ID'd by sound, you know, and sometimes you just have to go by the gestalt of the sound, or however you want to call it. Like, you know, something's really big and loud, that's got to be the pileated woodpecker. That's got to be peewil. But the hairy woodpecker and the downy woodpecker, you know, the downy woodpecker is a little bit slower, and the hairy woodpecker is really faster. So it's just a quality thing. And it's also a quantitative thing. If you record it on your sound sleuth or whatnot, you can figure it out. But also, there's the yellow-bellied sapsucker that's got that irregular rhythm. It's like bada-bap, bap, bada-bap, bap, bada-bap, bap. It's not the solid just drum. So yeah, they do sound different. Yeah, different species do drum differently.
Cool.
Well,
I think it'd be cool if a drummer did like a song that was like, these are the woodpeckers.
I'm sure there's somebody that's incorporated that into their music someplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would bet too.
We need to find it. If anybody knows of it, email me. My email's on the website too.
It's some electronica dance house in Prague.
So we have like one more thing in the question box that is more of a comment that I'm just gonna let everybody know what this person said, because I think it might be useful to some of us. So in case anybody is going to visit Arizona, this person says that Homer Hansen is a great birder, and I'll put this link that they put in here, and well respected in the Southwest, and that they took a birding by ear course from them, and that it was very helpful. So
That's
yes,
something to look for wherever you go. Look for a birding by ear course, workshops, and things that people put on. They are available pretty much wherever you go. There will be somebody that can help learn to bird by ear.
Awesome. So that's all of our questions that were in the question box, and it's after 6:30. So I think we're going to wrap up. I just want to say thank you all for coming and attending and asking your questions. There are plenty of resources, and if you ever want to refer back to any of them, we'll have them all on our website on that mrbo.org/MRBO webinars page. And like Ethan says, there's plenty of books out there to get you started too, as he's holding all of them up.
Love books.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.